This is Psychology Deep Dive with Harry Venice, and we're back with the big one on shadow work. Today, I want to give you another perspective to shadow work that will go a bit deeper. I'm going to take you back to the roots of Jungian psychology, and where Jung, this Carljung, for those that don't know, is this complicated guy who didn't just come up with this concept of the shadow, because if you read deeply, he digs into Nietzsche's philosophy. If you read Nietzsche's philosophy, the concepts of the shadow are there as well. And today I want to shine a light on Faust. Faust is a literary work by Goethe. I always get his name wrong, or funny. That's how I pronounce it. I'm an Aussie. And the black dog is what I want to focus on, this symbol. And I haven't thought about this symbol for a while, but I recently saw a movie, I think it's called Good Girl or Bad Girl, Good Girl, with Nicole Kidman. And there's a black dog in that movie. And I'm going to explore that in the next podcast episode and video. But when I saw this black dog, immediately I thought of Faust and the shadow. And I was originally just going to make a video about this Nicole Kidman movie, which has a lot of, if you're into the shadow and Jungian psychology, even just psychology generally, there's so much in that movie. It's quite a sexual movie. It was quite full on. I wasn't ready for some of the scenes, with my popcorn. But it's a great movie. But it brought me back to Faust and my roots and to Jung's roots. And so today, I want you to hang in there and think of, there's more to the shadow. And where did the concept come from? I've handwritten some notes for today. So if you just don't mind me while I read, but I wrote these because it's such a complicated way that Jung gets to the shadow and exploring Faust. I thought I'll keep it simple. I'll just write down some of the key parts of Faust and relevance for the black dog. I thought I'll write those down. I'll take you through them. Save you from listening to I think if you're going to do an audiobook, it could be like 10 hours. And it's pretty boring. I tried to listen to Faust and just at the gym, and it gave me a headache. It wasn't fun. But if you just bear with me as I read these, and what you're going to get is, I'm going to hand deliver to you some deeper parts of shadow work. What is your shadow? What is your unconscious? What's a symbol for the shadow? Because in and of itself, a symbol is meant to be something that you can't get its entire meaning from it. And now what we're going to talk about today with Faust and the black dog is the symbol being the black dog. It represents so much more. And in your life, you're going to have situations, especially with the shadow, where things are going to, it might seem like a small incident, for example, but there's so much more to it. The banal incident at the bakery where you got a bit annoyed, it might mean much more than you think. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break down some key parts of the Faust story. I'm going to show you the importance of the black dog imagery. Black, we're already thinking of shadow, dark, okay? And how this literary tale struck Carl Jung so much that he talks about Faust a lot and the black dog and this story. It's a very powerful story psychologically. It's just from a different time than our own. So, the Faust story begins in heaven, where this character, Mephistopheles, who is a personification of the devil, he boasts of the corruption that he's been able to get away with on earth. And he says, I can corrupt the most intelligent person. He's showing off to whoever's there, God, the angels. And then they put a wager up in heaven that he cannot do that. God says, I don't believe you can corrupt the most intelligent person on earth. Faust, a man, becomes a target for Mephistopheles. Now, Mephistopheles is a representation of the devil, of the dark side of evil, the shadow. Faust has consumed. Now, Faust, you've got to envision this man. He's not from our time. There's no mics and cameras and YouTube. He's consuming knowledge through books, and he's read all the books available to him. And he's yet to find the deepest knowledge that he seeks. He doesn't feel that he knows the real meaning of life, of peace, fulfillment, spiritual and divine knowledge. He doesn't feel fulfilled. At this point, he's sick of the routine. He's sick of the work, sick of the repetitive nature of life. And he says, screw it, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to take some poison and commit suicide. Clearly, he's depressed. And that's a relatable story to modern man and woman. But he has a vision. A vision appears. And he doesn't do it. And then he's meeting with a friend. So he hasn't committed suicide now. He's talking with his friend Wagner. And this is when a black dog appears. A strange, ominous dog. It's behaving weird. Faust says something's amiss here. The dog gets larger in size. He casts a spell. And it forces the dog to show its true identity. Of course, Mephistopheles appears. Now we're thinking the shadow side, archetypal, the devil. Those darker urges we have, the greed, we've all got it. You've got it, I've got it. When we get greedy, when we focus too much on the end result. Me today doing this, when I'm focusing on what do I get out of this? What's in it for me? That's the shadow. That's Mephistopheles. Now it has to be balanced. Otherwise you're delusional. You're not in touch with the ground, with reality. But Mephistopheles represents that part of us that wants a bit more than we should. The greed, the insatiable pleasure seeking, the lack of discipline. Or discipline for the wrong reason. So he tells Mephistopheles all his complaints. I'm sick of life. I'll do it in the modern tense. I'm sick of, going to work. I'm not satisfied. There's more to this. I've tried so hard. I've read all these books. I've gained earthly knowledge. I'm intelligent. I'm not fulfilled. It's not doing it for me. I'm sick of this. I was about to swear, but I edited myself. And then Mephistopheles now, think of him as the shadow, he makes a bet and he says, I will give you, Faust, a transcendental a transcending experience, the ultimate pleasure, this thing you seek, nirvana, the hopes and dreams, that hole in your heart. We have that hole, especially if we've had complex trauma or been through hard times. That hole, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to give you that pleasure. Faust, if you think of anyone depressed or suicidal, thought, screw it, what have I got to lose? I know, and that's the ignorance and arrogance of Faust. It's the opposite of mentalizing. It's the opposite of MBT, which is linked with attachment therapy, something I'm trained in and take very seriously. I'm clinically trained in that. He's not mentalizing and having a not knowing stance. He's got psychic equivalence. He thinks he knows everything. What have I got to lose? He's certain. He's certain. There's nothing here for me. But Faust, if the devil or the black dog, the shadow, if the shadow can give him this experience, Faust will have to give up his immortality because he has an immortal soul. And he will have to then work for Mephistopheles. It's a bet. He's betting his life. He's making a deal with the devil, literally. And he accepts the bet. And what this makes me think about is, don't we all make a bet? What bets have you made in your life? When you sell out? Because this is literally the making the deal with the devil stuff. And I think now of Robert A. Johnson, author and Jungian therapist, who talks about this unlived life. And when we give up that authentic life to the black dog, when we're not aware of the black dog, when we do all that, we give up the life we really want to live. And because of the shadow, the greed, we chase something else. It's when we want approval, when we want something to fill the hole in our hearts. That's when we make a bet. We make the wrong bet. So now on this expedition, Faust uses this Mephistopheles character to win over a lady, unethically. Her name's Margaret. But he has a moment of conscience. He realizes he's going to corrupt an innocent woman. But he still goes ahead with it. A number of tragedies ensue from this decision. Faust ends up poisoning Margaret's mother. And he did that. He gave her a sleeping potion to so that he could, make love to her, and she gets pregnant. But the mother dies. Faust then ends up killing Margaret's brother in a duel. The brother was angry that his sister had a baby or was pregnant out of wedlock. Now, Faust had left after killing the brother. But he reappears later and finds out that Margaret, his partner, was about to be executed for killing her baby. Which she did, of course, because Faust had abandoned her. She was left on her own. She couldn't cope. And of course, the black dog, Mephistopheles, the devil, hid this from Faust. At this point, Faust sees his shadow and the damage he's done. He sees this Margaret lady in such a bad state. He realizes his selfish actions have caused this. This is when we have a shadow integration. We see the light. We see from afar who we really are. The shitty decisions we made. And unfortunately, sometimes unintentionally, the people we've hurt. He tells Margaret, I'll help you, I'll save you, but I need the help of Mephistopheles to do this. She can see through this. She says no, she sees the shadow. She will get help from the angels, from the light. She's not going to go to the dark side. She refuses it. And then, because of this, she's saved. She goes to heaven. That's where the first book one ends, the first part of the book ends. And that's the key. So the black dog, it's very interesting when we peel this back. The black dog appears when Faust is at his worst. He literally is in a depression. He wants to kill himself. The shadow appears in the form of a black dog when he's at his lowest. And that's how it happens in real life. Our shadow appears when we are at our lowest, when we're at that turning point, at that crisis. Jung says about 35 to 40 years old is the time. It makes sense. The distractions, watching Netflix, getting obsessed, working out hard, we get tired of it. Working too hard, amassing money. But you see, Faust had a turning point. When he saw the shadow, he didn't really see his own shadow. Everything was externalized. The world sucks. I'm sick of life. And he was also quite ego-identified. He thought he knew everything. He thought book knowledge was divine knowledge. He thought getting really smart, it's like those, I mean, when I did my master's degree in law, I had this teacher who was so full of himself, but he hadn't worked a day as a lawyer. He had a PhD, but he hadn't worked in the field he was an expert in. And he was so full of himself. And I just couldn't believe it. And that comes to my mind. Hadn't worked a day in the field, and he was so arrogant. He'd just gone into books. Anyone that's been a lawyer, I mean, I used to be a barrister and a lawyer. You get humbled pretty quick on that job, and you realize even your university degree, the practice is totally different. So there's an arrogance that Faust had like that. He thought he was too concrete. He was too material-based. He was missing the point. And when he saw a shadow, an embodiment of the shadow, instead of seeing it for what it was, a deal with the devil, he couldn't see it. He didn't have the self-awareness, the insight. Now, I can get into the second act of Faust another time, but the bottom line now, to help with the shadow, is that I'll cut it short, the story of Faust. He essentially makes a bunch of decisions to gain power. He builds a city. And essentially he's been focusing on the wrong things. And then on his last day on earth, he finally has that beautiful vision. Because he did an act where he stopped focusing on himself and he built a beautiful city. He had the vision of a beautiful city that he's going to leave behind when he dies. And that people are going to enjoy it because he was ruling over people. He'd become a powerful ruler. And it's in that moment he feels euphoria. That is the pleasure, the transcending experience. Was not for himself. It was for the collective, what he could do for others. That was in his shadow, that experience was there. So the black dog is not just a negative thing, it's an opportunity. It's how do we interact with the shadow? Faust couldn't see that he was so caught up in the material. He had moments of conscience. And now the devil, of course, now, because Faust has had this moment, the devil is here to collect. You made a deal with the devil, mate. Time to collect when you sell out. But angels intervene because Faust finally was focused on helping others, and he'd learnt what's right and what's wrong. He lost half the bet, not the full bet. And it ends with he's able to meet his love, Margaret, in heaven. Love. That's what we get. It all comes down to love in some form or another. But the black dog is not the love we need. The black dog is the love of money, of me, of selfishness, of pleasure. That's what he wants. He wants pleasure, sexual pleasure, for example. Getting a woman with the wrong intention. Maybe getting a man with the wrong intention. I'm not a woman, so I don't know psychologically how that works. But guys can be pretty nifty to try to get things out of women. Pretend to be interested in them. Pretend they want a relationship. Get what they want. They're gone. Faster than the Speedy Gonzales. That's the bad pleasure. There's all sorts of empirical research that shows, people that do that sort of stuff, they're on the dark side of the personality traits, and they're quite miserable people. So he's able to get pleasure in a holistic way. He didn't need to know the knowledge of the world. There were people giving, doing the right thing, that didn't have all this knowledge. My microphone's sitting on a collected Work 18 Symbolic Life and another Jung book. Part of my shadow is I overly feel I need to learn and know that. To be happy? I don't know. Bit of insecurity? Some self-esteem? It's common stuff. But that's perfectly learning that is not going to give me the transcendent experience I want. Maybe using that to help people will. And I know that does. So I'm going to leave you with, started talking about shadow work. Well, the black dog symbolizes the shadow. Where are you overly pleasure seeking? Where are you overly selfish? Where are you in denial? What is your black dog? Have a think. Now, on the broader concept, for Faust, I've written down some things that I think it brings up relevant for Jungian psychology. Number one. Now, these are broader themes. They're relevant for shadow work. The collective versus the personal. When Faust focused on the collective, not the personal world. Personal world is more conscious-minded, more egocentric. But the unconscious is the archetypal, is the collective. When we're overly focused on the personal, we're not really going into the shadow, into the unconscious. We're focusing on the personal conscious world. I've written here the archetypal versus the personal. The archetypes, the black dog is archetypal. It represents something. the devil symbol, God, the angels. They're bigger principles than just the personal. And I've written here, individuation is not self-serving and living in isolation. You can't hide in a tree and individuate. It might be part of the process. You normally need to get to yourself to find the shadow, withdraw. But you have to be in the world of the world. You balance the opposites. We also deal with material versus spirit, conflict, opposites, heaven and hell within us. It's within us, and it's also symbolic. The black dog is within him. It's not just Mephistopheles. The heaven and hell is within him. It's not just a place he's thinking he'll end up. There's heaven and hell in us. That's very Jungian. And then it also deals with love, selfishness, narcissism, and ego. And one thing I want to bring up is it raises, and it's something I've been reading in regards to alchemy, collected work 13 of Jung. Jung emphasizes that the conscious and unconscious mind, they really compensate. So if you're overly focused on the material world, career, gaining money, using people, there's something constellating in the unconscious, in the shadow. The opposite. There's a compensating nature of the unconscious. And that's what's happening with the shadow of Faust, the black dog. It compensated. And if you see in the end, the story starts with him focusing on himself. But where does it end? Him focusing on others. That is exactly Jung's point about how the unconscious compensates. So when you have an overly rigid conscious mind, the opposite is going to be in the shadow compensating. It will show up in your dreams, for example. That's all I got today. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow if you're on one of the podcast services. In the next episode, I'm going to be focusing on the movie Bad Girl, I think it's called. I'll double check that, with Nicole Kidman, which covered the black dog and Faust. Enjoy that.